it also comes out in this era, and boy, this was big news, that Vince Russo accidentally emailed Mike Johnson of PWInsider his production notes that he had been supplying to TNA. Now, this is a total accident. He meant to email them to Mike Tenay, and when he typed in his Outlook or his Gmail or what have you, he typed Mike, thought it was to Tenay, it went to Johnson. Johnson breaks the news, and I'm curious what you think of this story, what you thought at the time, and what you think of it now.
Has Johnson or TNA or Russo ever commented publicly on this story?
I think everybody has.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's a.
I know. No, let me ask you this: when it happened. So the reason I'm just trying to when it happened. So I'm going to go back to my direct experience that. Okay. So would that have been 2012? Whenever we were in TNA headquarters, it was Gaborik, Dean, Dixie, Andy, myself. Anyway, we're all kind of in a row, and you're looking up on a big screen, and Janice from Dallas was on there. And I think I've told this story. Conrad, have I told this story about at the very end of the meeting, Dixie, Janice says, "Hey, Jeff, before we go, wrap it up," because we'd gone over business numbers and just
right.
all that kind of stuff. And Janice just casually said, "Well, Jeff, what do you think?" I said, "What's that?" She said, "About Vince being back." You could have heard a pin drop. I said, "Janice," I just kept on a poker face. I said, "Janice, I'm not aware of that at all." And literally left it at that because I didn't want to put Janice in a bad position, and I didn't want to put anybody in the room in a bad position. They knew that I didn't know. And
they didn't want to tell you.
No. Well, Dixie didn't want to tell me and mandated everybody else, don't tell Jeff.
Got it.
Those kind of things were the things that led me to say, Toby, we got to get this thing back, and when it did, I knew my best interest. I knew I didn't have a future there. Because if you're going to look, you don't have to tell the minority owner everything, but that was
a secret who's working there. It ain't for you.
No. And especially if I'm quote unquote the wrestling guy on the ownership team and I'm left in the dark. I mean, being you've talked about this. If I knew Eric or had the relationship with I have Eric now back then, it's a completely different story. Completely different story. I will say that. It's just so many things would have just by the communication, because playing the two sides and this and that, and I think Eric wasn't getting the real skinny from Spike, and I think he thought he was, and there was a lot of muddy waters, and it ended up ultimately Spike canceling. But when that story came out, my mind immediately went back to, well, I wonder how Dixie feels now about her decision.
Was it a well-known secret in wrestling that Vince was still working for TNA? I mean, clearly, it wasn't talked about.
I mean, I knew from whatever that time was, but I just left it alone. I mean, it was none of my business. There's no upside to it. I would have just created, and I'm sure my attorney told me back then, just forget you even know that. I mean, that was whew.
The Russo haters, and I'm not amongst them, but the Russo haters, I've seen theories that say, "Oh, he sent that email on purpose." I don't buy that. Do you?
I don't either. No,
that was by accident. Yeah.
Here's, gosh, and I say this through experience, but also the head scratching side of it. How in the world Dixie did that, knowing how Spike felt?
I don't understand it.
I'll never understand it. Never. Now I understand Vince's side a lot more now. Wanted a paycheck, needed a paycheck. I get all that.
Hey, yeah, and that's the thing. I'm glad you said that, Because I feel like sometimes we have these discussions on podcasts. That's what I was trying to talk about earlier. Like, hey, I know you're trying to launch Global for us, but you're working this AAA show, and I'm sure, like, we even got questions. Why'd you work the AAA show? Brother got bills. What do you mean? This is what he does for a living. So, like, I know that that's not fun or sexy, but if you're listening to this, you're probably listening to it on your way to work. Well, everybody in the wrestling business has to do that too. It's not just everybody's independently wealthy. Like when I was a kid, I thought the lady I saw on the 6 o'clock news, well, she's on TV. She must be rich and famous. She's just a regular person. That's just her job. Like, I think that gets lost. So I'm glad you said what you said about Russo. Yeah, of course he was doing it. Dude needed a job. Why would you not? Like, everybody's got to have an income. But from a Dixie standpoint, why would you potentially go against your biggest partner, your most valuable partner, where if that relationship goes sideways, maybe everything else is in jeopardy? Why would you risk that to give somebody else a job? Like on some level, hire Vince Russo to work with the power company. Let him do something with Panda. Shoot us some fun commercials for Panda.
Or
Right?
call up Kevin Kay and say, this is what I want to do.
What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I mean, I understand at the same time, she probably had a great relationship with Vince and wanted to help take care of Vince and get him a job. I get all that.
Totally.
There's another way to do it though, to
Yeah.
your point.